Mr. Kip Sorensen, what's up, brother? We're live on Facebook and we're recording here in the podcast.
Changing the world, one podcast.
What's up with your shirt? What is that? Shaylin? What is that?
That's this is a play on is it Chanel, the brand from I don't know. It's Vitor Shaolin, my old coach.
Shaolin. Okay, well, yeah, okay. I've heard you talk about him before, but I didn't know the shirt. So
yeah, that's my.
There we go.
My old
I don't know anything about Chanel or any of that,
Chanel,
so
yeah.
I wouldn't understand the reference. Sorry.
I almost paused for a second. I was like, yeah, she needs. What's cool about I like the stealth jiu-jitsu wear, right? That other jiu-jitsu guys
you have to be a practitioner to
yeah. You're like, oh, I get you. You know,
I wouldn't understand any of that.
No, whatever.
I'm not there yet.
You're getting there. You see an Origin logo and you're like, got you. I know that guy.
I like you. I like you.
What he does. Yeah.
That's right. Well, cool, man. Should we get to some questions today?
Yeah, for sure. We have some questions from the Iron Council, or exclusive brotherhood, as well as we got one guy, an anonymous guy, pinged me up on Instagram actually like 2 weeks ago. And he's like, could you please read this question? And I said, yes.
I've had people do that. And I just say, you have to join the Facebook group or the Iron Council.
Oh, sorry, anonymous.
No, I mean, it's fine. I'm just saying, like, because I don't want to like track down all these different things,
all these
and
other
I'll forget.
tools.
So it's just way easier for me to say, just go in the Facebook group.
I just
when
felt
we make
bad
a post,
because
comment.
he paid me money. He Venmo'd me some cash, so I was like,
I'm gonna have to have you send that over to me, and
we can be bribed.
That's right. Yeah, we'd happily bump your questions to the top of the list. I mean, there's a price to pay, but we'd happily do that.
Totally. And then of course we have some questions from Facebook, our private Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/Order of Man as well.
Yes, sir. All right.
Should we jump in?
We live in some crazy times, man. I haven't gone through these questions at all. I think I saw one or two. So we live in some crazy times. We'll see how it goes.
Dude, it's local news for us in Utah, but like, so there's some downtown protests, and protests is the right term, but they were rioting, right? Like they're like a buddy of mine, his building got vandalized, right? I know
Salt
him
Lake?
personally. Yeah, in downtown Salt Lake. Why? Like he's a cool cat. He's trying to do his job. You know what I mean? And his building gets vandalized. Why? Like, I don't know. Pisses me off.
I don't think I think there is some questions probably relating to this, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But it's a shame. At a minimum, it's a shame on a lot of different fronts, not just one front. There's all sorts. This whole situation is pretty jacked up. So maybe we'll get into it depending on the questions.
But this my point of bringing that up, because I thought it was so funny, is a dude pulled out a bow. Like, and it was like not like a real bow.
I saw that.
Like the news was like a hunting bow. You look at the bow and it's like he like picked that up at Walmart or Kmart.
Yeah,
bow,
I saw
right?
that.
And he pulled out,
and then
draws a bow, and he gets like rushed by the.
He got beat up, and then his car got lit on fire or something. I'm like, what in the world is happening?
Oh
like, number one, if you're gonna, well, first, don't get out of your car. All right, that's the first rule. Just stay in your car.
Yeah, why are you engaging? You're mad at someone for saying something? You're going to draw a bow on him?
Number two, don't use a bow. There's significantly more effective tools to use.
Oh, man.
Crazy. What? I don't know, man.
With the hatchet.
Good luck.
All right.
Luck.
Here we go.
Get to it.
I'm sure we'll get into these questions a little bit more as well.
All
right, Bill Sharp, do you still recommend index funds? This is we're like assuming that the next question is going to be about rioting, COVID-19, and Bill is focused on what he probably should be focused on. And his question is, do you still recommend index funds as a principal strategy for wealth generation, or has your perspective changed over time?
I don't know if I would say a principal strategy of wealth generation. I think I tend to lean more towards business, your own business, that is, because the stock market could be considered business. You're investing in thousands of businesses, right? I'm talking about your own business, real estate, but certainly the stock market can be a component of that. Index funds, no, not necessarily index funds, although the strategy of investing is similar to what an index fund would be like. But yeah, I think if you're talking about active versus passive investing, active investing would be like you going in and buying and selling stocks and picking stocks and doing individual trades, Forex, that kind of stuff. That's active market investing. Then you have passive investing, which when you hear it that way, you think, oh, passive, that's bad. That's passive. I don't want to do that. It's actually proven to be over time significantly better by way of returns when you're not dabbling and you're not tinkering and you're not toying around with things. So I suggest a passive investment strategy. And yes, you can use index funds to do that. But ultimately what you want is you want a broadly diversified portfolio. And I'm not talking about you own 1,000 large cap stocks, because, for example, if you owned 1,000 or if you own the S&P 500, right? So the largest 500 US companies. Okay. So you own that, and that's all you owned. Well, all of those stocks go up and down together. It's not what you're looking for. Often. You want to, right. So, like Procter and Gamble, for example, is going up and down with Apple, right? Like these are kind of mirroring each other. They're not interdependent of each other. So what you want is you want a broadly diversified portfolio, and you want them moving like this. So when your large cap stocks, for example, underperform, it's fine. You can buy those things up while these other things, you're selling these things off. Let's say small cap stocks have outperformed. So you sell those off, and then you buy the underperformers so that when they switch, and they will, it's all cyclical, then you take advantage of that. So you want a broadly diversified portfolio among different market capitalizations, small caps, large caps, et cetera, against different sectors of the market and across different cultures and countries in the world. That's what you want, broadly diversified portfolios with low turnover. Because if you have a portfolio that's being turned over and over again, you think you're being active and you think it's working, but you're getting killed on trading fees when you buy and when you sell, and you're just getting raked over the coals. Yeah. So if you look at a fund that is traded, and the name escapes me right offhand, so people are going to criticize me because I was in the financial planning practice, but I really can't. It's been so long, and I've like completely tuned out of it.
Yeah,
but if you
let's clarify, you did stop the podcast.
Yes.
Financial.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But there's portfolios, or funds, I should say, that are traded over 100% of the time, which means at the end of the year, inside of the fund is completely different than what was at the beginning of the year. Well, that's a huge turnover, which means there's huge and exorbitant fees built into that. So you want low turnover, because we all know it's long-term strategy. Everybody knows that. And you want a broadly diversified portfolio that's being rebalanced. I usually do quarterly, but maybe even annually. There's evidence that suggests that both will work and produce favorable returns for you over a long period of time. And you want to buy the underperformers, which is really hard to do from an emotional perspective because you're buying losers. Who wants to buy losers? And you want to sell off the winners, and who wants to sell? Like if you owned a football team, you wouldn't like sell your Super Bowl team. Like you'd want to keep everybody kind of there, right? But you're actually supposed to do the opposite in the market. And most people know that, but emotionally they can't handle it.
Yeah. Would you say most people, one of the common mistakes that a lot of people make is not being aware of the fees associated to investments?
Oh yeah, because they're all hidden in there, and
and being tied to these companies that are just raking you under the coals of all these fees. I mean, that was a mistake that we've made in the past, where I was like, oh, I'm investing now. It's like, wait a second, I could have gone with this other firm and none of these fees would have existed. And they make it seem so minor, but when you actually look at the numbers, you're like, holy crap,
yeah, you start adding them up.
Serious money away.
Yeah, because most advisors will do is they'll show you a portfolio. So you'll go to, let's say a prospect or a person. I don't even like that term, prospect. But let's say a family's come to me or you for investment advice, right? So they're interviewing both of us. And they go to you and they say, okay, well, what can you do for us? And you pull out this fund and you're like, hey, check this fund out. It's done 10% over the past 10 years. Yeah. Okay. And then they come to me and I'm like, yeah, check out this fund. It's done 8% over the past 10 years. Who are they going to go with?
Yeah. 10%.
They're going to go with you, right? Yeah. But what they fail to look at is that you have 2.5% fees built into your portfolio. So really your net return is 7.5%, right? And maybe, or it's not a great example, but you understand what I'm saying. And if mine had minimal or no fees, for example, then obviously that 8% net is better than a 7.5% net. So you have to look at that stuff. You can't just look at the rate of return and assume, oh, well, that's the whole story. It isn't. Just like anything, what we see on the surface is very rarely the entire story.
Yeah. Copy. All right, Mitch Jameson, what are your thoughts on the peaceful protests and riots and militarization of American cities in the wake of the murder of George Floyd? I'm having a hard time finding ground to stand on when I'm called a racist for believing the overwhelming majority of LOEs. What are LOEs?
Law enforcement officers or officials.
Okay. For believing that overwhelming majority of LOEs are incredible, righteous.
He said LOEs, but it's LEOs. But
LEOs. Okay. No, that's my bad. Actually, I read that wrong. The letter of engagement. So I saw LOE and I went for the acronym IC.
No. LEO. Hey, dude, talk about seeing things from your own perspective. Yeah, like that ties perfectly into the answer to this question, I'm sure.
I saw that and went with the term that I use all the time.
That's funny.
So anyhow, for believing that they're human beings, and then I'll be called anti-law enforcement for agreeing that what happened to Floyd was indeed murder. I live only a few miles from where this incident occurred, so it is literally hitting me close at home. I'm trying to be an example for my younger brother and a lighthouse for other confused men in this area, but I'm stumped currently. Thank you both for your input.
Yeah, it's hard because I think we're at an interesting point where people have a hard time believing that somebody can hold two ideas at the same time. Right. So, for example, that George Floyd's death was horrendous. It was atrocious. It was a real travesty that happened. And the officer who committed that crime, and it is a crime because he's been charged with murder at this point, should stand trial and should be brought to justice. So I can believe that. And also, these aren't conflicting ideas. I can believe that. And I can also believe that law enforcement officers, for the most part, are trying to do their job accurately, correctly. They're in stressful situations. I can support our law enforcement community. That doesn't mean that I think it's okay as to what happened to George Floyd. That doesn't mean that at all. Those two ideas can exist simultaneously. And people have a very hard time wrapping their heads around it because of tribalism. We're pitted against each other. So if I believe anything that could be slightly interpreted as being part of that group over there,
that tribe,
right? Then everything I believe goes to that tribe. And if I believe what happened to this tribe over here, then everything I have to believe has to be part of that. Like there can't be any nuance, right? You're either with us or you're against us. It's like, well, what if I'm both? Like, what if I'm with the idea that police officers need training, they need to be vetted, there's a whole host of things that need to happen within the law enforcement community. And also, I support the work that you're doing. I just think there's a better way to do it, and we ought to explore what that actually looks like.
Totally.
So it's hard. So the answer is, look, if you're coming across a bigoted person, and that's really what it is, they don't accept your viewpoint, whatever it is, whether you're on this side or that side or somewhere in the middle, then there's nothing you can say or do that would win that individual over. And the best thing that you can do is to disengage.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing, well, Ryan, you can't just disengage because silence speaks volumes. Yeah, but what's the alternative? You getting into a debate or even a violent confrontation and nothing good comes of it. In fact, worse, it becomes worse because you got involved. So I don't deal with people like that. Now, if you want to have a real conversation and you disagree with me and I disagree with you, as long as we can do that respectfully and civilly, I would love to have that conversation. I actually enjoy intellectual debates like that because it causes me to think, or it causes me to shore up my current perspective or consider a different perspective. I made a post yesterday about not allowing our emotions to dictate, to be the sole contributor for the course of action that we're going to choose. A metric, but not the only metric that you should consider. Yeah. And somebody wrote back, and they completely took my words out of context. They made up a bunch of assumptions about me and what I was saying that wasn't really there. And then, so he went on this little tirade for a minute. And then at the bottom, he said, "Are you open to a discussion?" And I simply wrote back, if you're asking if I'm open to a discussion with somebody who has completely misrepresented and misconstrued my words, the answer is, of course, no. Why would I? It doesn't play out well. Why would I be interested in having that type of conversation with you? Oh, well, you're just closed-minded. You're just a bigot. No, bro. I just am not interested in having that type of conversation with somebody I don't think is interested in a good faith discussion. So as long as somebody wants to have a good faith discussion and be honest with their questions and their line of questioning and their own perspective and not jump to a bunch of assumptions and not try to guess what my motives are, I'm happy to have that discussion. But outside of that, there's nothing you can do. So the thing that you can do right now is, and I've been thinking a lot about, like, what is the answer? And there isn't just some magical fairy dust that we could sprinkle on everybody and just whatever this answer is that it would solve everything. It's complex. It's difficult. There's a lot of emotion and everything else, and there are some atrocities that need to be dealt with. But the best conclusion that I can come to is that we as men, leaders in our homes, leaders in our businesses, leaders in our community, need to start espousing and sharing some shared virtues. Right? We need to come across some shared principles. For example, personal responsibility, civility, law and order, empathy, kindness, strength, compassion. These are all principles that if we can wrap our heads around and have some sort of shared vision of the principles we're going to operate by, then we can have differences of opinion, but at the root of what we're discussing, we all believe the same things. And I think we're at a pivotal moment in the U.S. and frankly across the planet where those shared principles aren't even there. Right? Like I have a hard time wrapping my head around somebody who's going to loot and riot and be violent and destructive and vile, how that individual would have a shared principle with me, which is personal accountability, personal responsibility, civility, all the things I just talked about. That said, you could take somebody who's protesting and they're doing it civilly and they're doing it respectfully, and maybe they're frustrated and emotional and upset, but they're doing it in a way where they've ascribed to those shared principles, right? They can do it with civility and respect. And okay, you disagree with me, maybe I disagree with you, but hey, we're civil about it. So at the root, and here's the thing about it too, I don't know why there's so much divisiveness.
I don't understand it either.
Because I haven't met or heard of a single individual who has said that what happened to George Floyd wasn't just a horrific act of evil. Yeah. I haven't heard one single, black, white, anybody. I haven't heard a single soul say that. Yeah. And he's been arrested. Yeah. He's being tried for murder. This is, look, it's a tragedy, but the justice system sounds like it's working the way it should. Totally. That guy committed an act of evil. He's been arrested. He's being tried for murder. That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, that's the system.
So
yeah,
that's the system.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand where the divisiveness comes from. And a lot of people will say, well, it's the media and it's this and it's that. It is partly that. You know, the media is fanning these flames for sure. And there's weird things like piles of bricks and things showing up at protesting. It's weird. But there is people who are using this as an opportunity to be violent, disgusting, and that is not going to help anybody's cause.
It's not for Floyd. That's not for Floyd.
No.
You know what I mean? Anyone stealing a TV from Target has nothing to do with Floyd.
Right.
They're capitalizing on a horrible situation to benefit themselves, period, and to be idiots.
Right.
Like, oh,
And people
man,
say, well, they're angry.
I don't give a
Like I
shit
said
if you're
before,
angry.
it doesn't matter if you're angry. Right. It's like,
Yeah. In what
that's
world
not
do we live in where you could say, well, I'm angry, so that's okay that I did X? Really?
exactly. Exactly.
When is that ever allowed? Oh man, it drives
That's
me
what I'm
mad.
talking about with the emotions. You can't allow, you can be angry and still have, well, and look, anybody who's protesting, I've got to say, what is your objective? Right? Your objective is justice. I think justice is being played out at this point. Your perspective is equal rights. I think that's a fair request.
Yeah.
You want to be treated equally among everybody else. Like, there's nothing. That's right. I agree with that. So, do your actions help you in that cause or undermine that cause?
Yeah. And a lot of it's being undermined.
It is, and it's not by thought, and it's not by thoughtful protesters who are trying to fight injustice.
Yeah.
Because those people I want to listen to.
Totally.
Somebody asked me, for example, if I was going to participate in the Blackout Tuesday or whatever it is.
Oh, I'm already confused. So I pulled up like Instagram this morning. I'm like, okay, why is there black photos being posted?
Yeah.
So I have no idea even what it is, actually.
I said, no, I'm not going to participate in that. And I know without fail, people are hearing this now and they're like, oh, well, you're a racist and you don't care. No, I do care. I care deeply. I want to make sure all this stuff's being resolved. I've been talking about it for 5 years, about being men of honor and character and leading the kind of lives that we can be proud of. So I've been talking about it for 5 years, but there's just so many messages that are all getting conflated that it's like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that I support equal rights for every single American, including our black brothers and sisters? Yeah, I agree with that. Or does it mean I condone looting and rioting? Because I don't agree with that. So, like, I don't even know what that message means right now. So I'm not going to participate in that. Yes, I'm not going to participate in that.
I can see. What's your thoughts on this? Because I actually think that, back to Mitch's question a little bit, is so much of this is actually laziness of mind. Like, everything is way more complex than we give it credit, right? And we have a tendency to like tribalize. You made that reference earlier. Like, we jump to a conclusion or a tribe because that's like the easiest mental thing to do, and it requires too much mental capacity to go, let me consider the other point of view, or maybe
I don't think that's
more at
it.
Play, or no, you don't think it's just.
I don't think it's laziness. I really don't. I just think it's people, and including me. Like, I had a discussion with a friend just yesterday. I don't think many people are being lazy. I think they're just so deep, and I say they, but I'm talking about me too. We are so deeply rooted in our belief system, whatever that belief system is, that it is so difficult, if not impossible, for us to acknowledge another individual's perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be frank, like, I've caught myself saying there's no racism in America. Like, we had a black president for 8 years.
Yeah.
And so I pull out and extract one example of why it doesn't exist. But you know what? I've never been singled out by the police. I've never been looked at suspiciously because I was walking down I've never had that. And so for a long time, I thought to myself, well, what are they talking about? I've never experienced any of that. Well, of course I haven't.
Yeah.
That's my perspective, right? So it's not laziness, I don't think. I just think we're so firmly rooted in our beliefs that why would I even look at that? It's not that I'm lazy about it. It's that that's not even relevant, right? It would be like saying if somebody doesn't run a marathon, but they are working on powerlifting and they powerlift every single day, that they're lazy because they don't run to train for a marathon. It's like, that's not their thing. Like, so it's not laziness. It's just, that's not in their purview right now. That's not what they're interested in. And I think that's more indicative of what's happening.
I see.
Which I do think that the benefit of this, not the rioting and the looting, but the protesting, is that seems to me a lot of people are beginning to expand their horizon and their perspective, including myself, which is a good thing, right? It's a good thing. So not the rioting and the looting, that's different, but protesting and the awareness of it is a good thing. We can consider other people's perspectives. And ultimately, we don't have to embrace it. I think there's a lot of things that maybe we ought to consider adopting into our life. you can make that decision for yourself, but at least expanding your capacity in your eyes, I think is always a good thing.
Yeah. What's the craziness about bricks? Like bricks are showing up at places for people to throw them?
Yeah, I've seen multiple videos where there's just stacks of bricks that have been delivered on pallets and wrapped and just like set there. It's like, what?
Yeah. I saw a video of like guys taking wood pallets and like dropping them off at the Target in preparation for catching thing on fire.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, that's actually more reason.
The looters that brought them.
Oh right? Yeah. See, this is weird, man. This is really, really strange.
Yeah. Well, and what I found out too is that the cop and Floyd worked together in the past, so they actually know each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Look that up, man. And you start going, oh wait, well, hold on, like.
That sounds together? That sounds conspiracy to me, Kip. I gotta say.
Hey, that sounds it's all about views. It's all about views, baby.
I'm gonna look it up, but that sounds borderline conspiracy issues.
How's this? And let's be honest, that's all we do, right? Is regurgitate what we hear. But I have read that multiple times that they actually were like security guards. Or
from your sister's brother's uncle told you about it or something. Yeah.
No, I know both guys actually. No, any chick. I mean, but hypothetically, let's assume that's accurate. That changes this.
Oh, it changes the narrative for sure.
Yeah, like this is a personal dilemma, and you know what I mean. It, like, you know, don't get me wrong. He's still a cop. He's still held to that standard.
Yeah, it doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, but interesting.
But there's more to the story potentially.
Yeah, there's always more to the story. Always.
According to Alex Jones.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next question. Yeah. Are we good with that? All right.
I think
Dave Anonymous. Gents, would be interested in hearing how you would give teenage kids context to the protests going on across the nation and compare them to the destructive riots that are also happening.
I think what you could do is, I'm just trying to think about my own kids and the conversations we've had. I think it would be very easy to create an example that they may be familiar with, that they weren't happy with, or they saw some sort of wrong or injustice happening, and asking them, would they be willing to stand against that?
Yeah.
Right? Like if you saw somebody bullied at school and, for example, you just let that happen, how would you feel about yourself? Or would you try to draw attention? Would you defend that individual?
Yeah.
I hope you would. I hope I raised you to do that. Would you speak up against it? Would you report that to the authorities? Would you stand with the people who have been victimized? Like, I hope you would do that stuff, right? And then you start talking and asking questions about, well, how would you do that? And what would be an appropriate response?
What does that look like? Yeah.
Would you smash the windows at the school? Would you start beating up other people who maybe just didn't necessarily agree with you? Would you steal things from the classroom? You know, so we break it down and we bring it into, I don't know what age group we're talking about here, but you break it down into a context that's relevant.
Would you fight the other kid that were friends with the kid that was bullying?
Right.
You make them wrong? Do you attack them?
Right. Yeah. So I think you just ask these questions. I had a very uncomfortable conversation with my son the other day. A very uncomfortable conversation
about this
sex. No, about sex and
that's fine.
I mean, we've had the birds and the bees, but like this went into a level that I was like, oh. But it was manageable because
do not Google this, and I will give you the answer if you promise.
Well, and that's the thing. Most of us just spend an inordinate amount of time avoiding these conversations, and they're totally uncomfortable and awkward. But like at the end, I walked away and I'm like, I'm really glad that we had that conversation. Yeah. But I just asked him questions. Like I didn't preach to him.
Yeah.
I just asked him questions.
Allowed him to work.
What do you know? Like, what do you think? What do you already know? Like, what do I need to explain? What don't I need to explain? Like, what are you coming to this with some preconceived notions? Are you coming with an empty mind and an open slate? Like, I don't know. I got to find that stuff out. Yeah. So I think all of us would do better in life in general if we were just quicker to ask questions. Like I saw somebody that we both know the other day. He said, I think this morning, in fact, on Facebook, he said, I'm looking for a mentor, any takers? And it was like, oh, do this and do that and do this and here's this and here's that. And I'm like, well, what do you want?
I'll tell you what to do. Yeah.
No. It's like, that's what people were doing, right? And my question was, hey, like, what does that mean? What is it? What are you after? Right? Allow that individual to clarify so that you can know, like, oh, okay, well, based on that new information that I didn't have before, here's how I would approach that. I just think learning to be better understanders of people by asking questions in good faith. Okay, if you're asking rhetorical questions or bullshit questions or questions that you're trying to trap other individuals
or to manipulate them.
Yes, that's different. That's not in good faith. And we see that on Facebook all the time, social media all the time. People asking questions. It's like, come on, dude.
It's really,
we know
they're
that's
not really
an honest
open
question.
to hear answers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to trick you or, like you said, manipulate. But yeah, I think just become a great asker of questions.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of goes to Mitch Jameson's question above, like he mentioned a reference of being a good example to his brother. And it's like, sometimes that's just listening, like, especially with family members, right? Like if I have family members that disagree with me on something, I may not debate with them, but I'll understand their perspective. It's actually quite insightful to go, oh, well, why do you think that? And I don't even have to reply. Like, I don't have to go, oh, well, I see that different because, but why?
Yeah.
Like, just listen, understand, like, be content.
And you can understand people without even agreeing with them.
Totally.
Right? Like, oh, I actually kind of get what you're saying. I don't agree with it, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I can see
I think
that.
there's a great quote, like a sign of high intelligence is to understand someone's point of view without agreeing with it or something like that.
Right. Cool.
It's interesting. All right. I have to share the story. It's really funny about the riots and stuff. So Dave asked the context of this kid. So this happened last night. So we have some friends that are Black, right? And my daughters are really good friends with the other kids. And Asia was talking with their parents about these riots and everything. And my daughter Kika goes, so am I Black or am I white? She has no idea. She has like no idea if she's like Black or white. And then my youngest, that's 6, Kulani, goes, I'm not Black or white. I'm just really tan.
You gotta love the innocence, man.
Yeah, and that's their response to this.
Right, because
like
they don't care.
Even understand. They don't even understand the labels that are being used.
Right.
They're colorblind to it all. And I just love that.
Well, and it's not that they're colorblind. It's that it's just irrelevant.
Yeah, it's
like here's one
on the radar.
Here's the thing you can do, okay? Opposite ends of the spectrum. You can be extremely racist. You can be an evil, nasty human being. You can be completely racist. Or you can pretend like we're all the same. It's like, clearly you're Black and clearly I'm white. Like, we don't have to avoid saying that or acknowledging that. That's not what we're talking about. But I see people who do that, like, I'm colorblind. I see everybody the same. No, you don't. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Like you look a certain way. I look a certain way. I'm not trying to compare this, but I had people say, I remember one in particular, I walked in and that's when I had my long beard. I walked into a store and then one of the workers there had like a long beard and they actually looked a lot alike. And another worker came in and was like, do you guys have like a secret acknowledgement, like acknowledge each other's beards or whatever? And he's like, the worker's like, no, I just, like, he's got a beard, I got a beard. Like, we both see it. It's not really a big deal. And then we just get back to our interaction. Like, we don't ignore it and we don't necessarily need to acknowledge it. It's just, it is what it is and it's okay, So that's what I think is like, we don't need to avoid pretending or we don't need to pretend like we're exactly the same. Yeah. Like, even with cultures, it's like, I'm interested in maybe the Jewish culture, for example. Like, I'm interested. I mean, what do they do? Like, why do they believe that? Like, I'm curious. But I'm not going to pretend that they believe the same thing I do. Obviously, that isn't true. Yeah. But that doesn't mean they're my enemy. I'm not their enemy. Like, I'm just kind of curious. Like, what's the deal? So I think if we have more conversations like that, not where we pretend the differences don't exist, but we just try to understand the differences, I think that's fine. And I think we should be doing those things.
Yeah, totally. All right. That was a funny story.
It was funny. Yeah. Yeah, you're funny.
All right.
Yeah.
Keep that
It is funny, though. I'm just really tan. That is funny. Kids are awesome.
Well, because they've been at the lake a lot. And so my daughters get really dark during the summer. And so she's like, well, I'm just really tan.
I had one.
Counted. It's funny.
So this was years ago. I went to Las Vegas with my wife and my kids were there. And I must have been going to meetings or something or a conference. So my wife tells me later what had happened. Well, they went to McDonald's and my oldest son, they were at the McDonald's playground. And look, in Southern Utah, like it's white. It's all white, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we go to Las Vegas and they're at the playground and he walks up to this little Hispanic girl and he says, "Hola," real excited. And she looks at him like,
You like want to practice his Spanish?
well, she looks at him like, what? And then she answers him in English, says something back to him in English.
Yeah.
And my son walks up to my wife, his mom, and he's like, "That's how you talk to them, Mom." And it wasn't about judgment. It wasn't about like they're different. He was like, "I actually want to connect with that individual, so I'm going to make an effort to do it in a way where I could connect with that person." It was innocent.
Yeah.
Right? Now, maybe it came across incorrectly, but it was an innocent thought. Like, I want to connect with this person. Maybe I should say this because that will help me connect with that individual.
Totally.
It's just a really funny thing.
Yeah, it's no different than the American that goes to France and he's trying to speak to everybody in French.
Right.
You know, it's like,
Right.
And the French are annoyed by him. It's like, oh, he's trying. You know.
Yeah, he's trying. It's a noble effort.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, Ron Christopher, what if your spouse is not on the same growth path that you are on? What if
She shouldn't be.
tried? Yeah. What if you have tried everything to preside in a manner that should bring her along, and she remains stuck in the fog, assuming there is not a long history of bad blood and things that would make you ineffective leader for your family?
Look, I don't know the context of this question, but odds are she's not going to be on the same growth path as you. Are these Iron Council questions still?
Yeah.
Look, there's a bunch of guys in the Iron Council who have shared values and shared interests, but not a single one of us is on the same path.
Yeah.
Your path looks different than my path. There's some shared values and some shared objectives and things, but your path between you and I is different. And if I had the expectation that you needed to do the same thing that I did, and you need to have the same goals and interests and likes and hobbies and activities, and you needed to do it my way, otherwise you're lazy or you're not a self-starter or you're not on a growth path, then of course you're inviting contention into your space. Look, again, I don't know the context of it. I'm just speaking from what I hear. And maybe instead of making it about her being on your path, which is what it sounds like, maybe help her find her own path. You know, maybe she's not interested in the same things you are, and that's okay. But maybe if you found something that she was interested in, she'd be really interested in walking down that growth path. There's an infinite number of growth paths. And just because it doesn't look like yours doesn't mean it's wrong. Now, that said, I mean, at some point, like if she's not willing to grow at all, you know, she's not really willing to exert anything or try anything, maybe there's some counseling that will help. Maybe she can't hear it from you for whatever reason, and maybe there's some counseling. She can hear it from somebody else and get involved in somebody else, with somebody else. You know, and I'm not romantically, that's not what I'm saying, but get involved with somebody who will help her work through these issues, right?
And I think it's important to provide this clarity. You're saying to help her have a growth mindset of some sort, not be on your growth path, not like agreeing with you per se, but just having the mindset of growth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, my wife isn't on my path. Like, how boring would that be if she was on the same path I was? Ugh. You know, but she adds variety and difference and uniqueness and edges to the conversation and rounds things out a little bit in a way too. And it's like, cool, I'm glad that she's on that path because I get to explore things I would have never considered before.
Yeah. I had a good conversation with a friend a couple weeks ago. We were actually chatting very similar subject to this, and I really love what he said, and it really kind of like struck me really hard that night when we were talking. And one of the things that he mentioned was what a devastating way to look at life when it doesn't have growth in it. And what I'm getting at is not so much the concept of growth mindset, but like we have a tendency to pigeonhole people and think that they're set, right? Like, you know, Ron might be looking at his wife and says, well, she's in the fog and that's final. Check. It's like right now, but why not give her the freedom of saying, you know, maybe she's in the fog for a while until she figures it out, until she grows. Like if we don't believe in a world by which people can evolve and change and grow, how devastating is that? Right. And we have a tendency to give that to ourselves. Like, oh, well, I can change and evolve and grow, but everyone else, we don't. Right. And like, we even do it to our kids, right? Like I have a tendency, like my kids make bad decisions and I like pigeonhole them and paint them in a box. Like, okay, made bad decisions. It's like, whoa, that's how you learn. Right. Or people change their religious beliefs. It's like, oh, that's final. No, it's not. Right now in the present, that's where they are, but that's not final. Until they're dead, nothing's final. And so I would really, at least for me, that really gives me the mindset and grants me compassion and realize that path looks drastically different. And there is no final state to any of us until this world's over for us. And until then, it's all about learning, experience, and growth. And sometimes it takes us a while to get on certain paths. And I used to always say, Ryan, like, you're on the different part of the path. But I kind of like the idea that there's different paths. It's not even the same path. Like, it might be parallel, might be a little over there a little bit. And that's okay. And I really do think too, is like, you know, I've had some tough relationships in my past. And I was talking with one of my brothers about, I'm being elusive on purpose, sorry. But I was having this conversation with one of my brothers and he's like, how have you dealt with that poor relationship? And my response to him was, because I chose to accept them for the way they are. Like, I don't have any preconceived notions of like, well, they need to be like this, and then I'll love them.
Right.
I just chose to say, hey, guess what? They're not going to change.
Right.
Or they might change, but I choose to accept them the way they are. How powerful is that to be able to go to your spouse and say, guess what, honey? I support and love you, period. Right. And then let's see what growth happens, you know, and it's not based upon some preconceived notions. And I know that's kind of a gray space because now we have boundaries and things that we talk about on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, that's not at odds. That's like,
but yeah.
I think you're dead on with that. I think it's important also to acknowledge the things that she does well. You know, sometimes we have a tendency of looking at what other people are doing, especially if we have high expectations of ourselves. We usually have high expectations of other people.
Yeah.
So we put them under this microscope that isn't really fair, right? Because we have these expectations for that individual that don't match with their expectations, their reality. So I think it is important to acknowledge when you see encouraging behavior that you celebrate it, that you acknowledge it, that you honor it, because naturally people are going to want to do more of that, especially if you're connected and this is your wife and it's likely that she loves you and you love her. And if she hears some gratitude or some appreciation, like, you don't think that she's going to be interested in that and respond differently than maybe she has in the past? I think she certainly will. And don't you think she might go out of her way to do it differently or better? You know, I even think about this with making dinner, for example. You know, and people are going to get after me about this because my wife's a homemaker and they're like, oh, your wife makes you dinner, make your own
domineering
make your own dinner.
Yeah.
Dude, that's not what it's about. What it's about is that she likes to take care of the house.
She enjoys it.
She likes to support me. And if part of that means that she likes to make dinner for the family, me included, then there's nothing wrong with that. But if I showed up every night with the attitude of expectation or a non-grateful attitude, how hyped up do you think she'd be about preparing dinner for the family and having family dinners together? No, but every night when we sit down, I thank her for the meal. We say our prayer. I thank God for the food, and I thank her for preparing it. And we celebrate it, and we have, you know, like we're enjoying it, and we have fun. Of course, we put up with the kids eating their vegetables like every family does. But, you know, like I'm encouraging because that's the behavior that I appreciate. I like that. I want more of that. I want her to make me dinner.
Yeah.
I want her to make me lunch. These are the things I want her to do. Like, so I know it sounds maybe weird from those people who don't get it, who don't understand this perspective of how this dynamic works when you have a stay-at-home wife and mother, but like, this is good. I'm honoring her, and she enjoys it, and she feels good about it. In fact, I've asked her. She's like, no, I like making dinner for you guys because it makes me feel valuable. Yeah. It makes me feel appreciated. It makes me feel like I'm contributing to the family dynamic. Yeah, that's all wonderful.
Expression of love. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Love it. All right, Brandon Stoll, put yourself in the shoes of the people who sat and watched the death of George Floyd. What would you have done? Would a man intervene? Good question.
This is a good question. I actually saw this question before.
Yeah.
And I would like to say that, yes, I would have intervened. Like, I would like to have said that.
Yeah.
But you don't know.
Oh, man.
That's the thing is like, what if that guy was your sergeant? Like, he was in charge and you were a new guy on the police force. Does it make it okay? No. I'm just saying, like, makes it harder. Like, we got to understand the nuances of these things, and we have to understand human psychology. And there's a herd mentality. And if there's a leader or somebody doing something, and maybe we have an affinity with that individual, then we think, okay, I can't rock the boat. That guy's, he's in charge, or, I want to support him because if I don't support him, then it'll look bad. There's all sorts of little justifications and reasons in our head. And I'm not saying it's okay, guys. I'm not. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, you better know your principles before you get into the position where they're going to be tested. You better know what you're going to stand up for and what you won't before it happens. Because if you haven't identified it, you're going to allow those justifications and rationalizations to get the better of you and keep you from doing what you normally would do. But I'm just telling you, human psychology is a very interesting thing. And many of us who are saying, oh, I would have done this, would not in fact do that. No. They would do the opposite of it for whatever reason. So you need to know what you stand for. You need to have some convictions. You need to know what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do. And if you make those decisions now, it'll be much easier when you're faced with a situation that you don't like, that you don't approve of, but you got to make those decisions ahead of time.
Yeah. And it helps you have some compassion too, because don't be so naive to say, oh, I would have jumped in. It's like, and maybe this is one of those dangerous scenarios, right? So I'll try to be careful when I say this, but I don't even know the cop's name. But hypothetically, replace him with a good friend of yours.
Right. That changes
someone you really like, that you respect, and this is 100% out of character. And then this happens.
Yep.
Like, holy crap. Now you got a way drastic different scenario where, like, that's your friend. Like, this is out of character, but maybe something else is going on and you're not quite sure. And that changes things, man.
Yeah.
But it's
again,
so
it doesn't
easy
make
for
it
us
okay.
to have hindsight 2020 and look at this and go, oh, I would have, yeah, whatever. I think a lot of us, we can be hypothetical, but we don't know unless we are actually placed in the circumstance, right?
And it doesn't make it okay. You know, I actually saw a video just a day or two ago of another, it was a rioter or a protest, I don't know, and there is a distinction, but a police officer had him down on the ground, two police officers had him down on the ground, and he was cuffed, and one of the officers had his knee on the guy's neck, just like this incident with George Floyd.
Yeah.
And the other arresting officer, he was fiddling with his hands, getting the restraints on, and he just grabbed the officer's knee and like pulled it off of it and like put it onto his shoulder or his back or something. You know, I'm like, well, that's good. That's exactly what needed to happen. He saw something that shouldn't have happened. He made the correction and made the adjustment. Why did he do that? Okay, look, here's the interesting thing. If the incident with George Floyd didn't happen, would that police officer have corrected that behavior? Yeah. We don't know. The only reason I think, maybe not the only, but one of the reasons he corrected that behavior, because it was in the forefront of his mind, holy shit, this guy's got his knee on that guy's neck. I got to move that. Yeah. Which means that he paid attention to it before the situation. And that's the point I'm making. You have to know what you're going to do before the situation arises, which means you need to, the term that I like, it makes a lot of sense, is war game these things.
Yeah.
You got to think about, okay, if I was robbed, if I was mugged, if I was faced with something I didn't like, if I saw racism, what would I say? How would I deal with it? How would I approach somebody I love and care about if they said something out of line or did something that I didn't agree with? You better start working that stuff out in your mind right now, Because when the day comes and you're going to be tested, you're just going to fall back on the default. And the default might not be behavior that now where you're not in it would be behavior you would condone.
Yeah. Which is a form of psychological training. And then you take that same principle and you apply it to the cops and say, now it's just about training, right? Like, I don't know. We could probably ask. I actually know a couple guys that do some of this training for officers, but it's like, is this part of their training regimen? Right? Is this like part of the ways that they maintain control over individuals, a knee on the neck? Like, did he follow his training?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And or if he got hyped up because he had a huge adrenaline rush, how do you deal with that? You can actually train that out. You know this, like, I've never seen a black belt in jiu-jitsu that had a huge amount of pride and has a huge adrenaline rush. Why? Because it's been beat out of them, right? Like, they're so humble and calm in the circumstance. Was this guy humble and calm? Maybe he wasn't. Like, how much of this has to do with training as well? Like, it's just and once again, like, I hate that we have to keep saying it, but it's like, I'm not condoning anything, but it's like, when you look at the circumstance, it comes back to training of the mind, training of the body, what kind of training the officers are getting. I mean, so much is at play that really affects the outcomes of these circumstances, I think.
Well, and I also think it's valuable, again, not as a justification or rationalization, but I think it's valuable to put ourselves in these scenarios. You know, what if I was that person? What would I do? That's a great question to ask.
Yeah, totally.
Because you might be in that situation at some point or something similar to it.
And I don't know the question for, like, Brand's question. Like, if I were a spectator, would I rush the cop to get him off his neck? Probably not. You know, and I know that sounds horrible because then this guy's life would be on me a little bit because I could have done something, but I don't know. You know, like, I've never, to be honest with you, I didn't read this question ahead of time, so I don't know. Like, I actually want to, like, kind of work through through my mind a little bit and think, well, you know, what would I do?
And I think that's an exercise that all of us could do, and that would change the dynamic of what we see. Is like, would we behave the same way? If you're not willing to evaluate it and critically ask yourself objectively how you would behave, then I think, I hate to say it like this, but I think you're missing out on what could become an opportunity for growth and expansion.
Yeah, totally. I mean, people are communicating, obviously, you know what I mean, trying to convince the officers to, you know,
right, to get off his neck,
to get off his back. So people are doing something, right? But to what extent, right?
Yeah.
Good question, Brandon. All right. Anonymous Instagram, just really quick, Mr. $20.
20? Is that all it is? Hell, I would have started higher.
Oh, higher? Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
We're going to bid. We're going to bid for the best questions.
All right. This is a little COVID related.
Right.
Yeah. That's funny how that's like, oh, wait, I forgot about the whole COVID-19 thing.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? That's an interesting thing.
All right. I work as a nurse, and recent events have highlighted many issues with the hospital leadership. We're on the verge of forming a union and giving ourselves a voice, but there's a real need for leadership. At the same time, I'm worried that being at the front of this could lead to a backlash with my management for obvious reasons. How do I lead the charge to elicit real change while also minimizing the chances of facing retribution?
I don't know what change you're talking about. So it's hard for me to say, well, here's what I would do. I just don't know what change you're talking about just because I'm not in the thing. But look.
Yeah, but it obviously sounds like a challenge, right? Obviously a challenge to what management is asking.
Right. I mean, they don't want you to form a union. And there's pros and cons on both sides of that debate, that argument, right?
Yeah.
Because unions can be weaponized against private companies just as easily as they could be formed to help the members of the union. So it's like it could go either way, right? Yeah. But here's the nature of leadership. You're going to rock the boat. Like, you don't get to have both.
Yeah.
Right? You don't get to say, well, I'm going to do something that's challenging, but how do I do it without them feeling like I'm challenging them? That's what you're doing. By design. You don't approve of the way something is being handled, so you're deliberately and intentionally, whether you're right or wrong is irrelevant, but you're deliberately and intentionally doing something to challenge the status quo. So how can you ask, well, how do I do it without them feeling challenged? You can't. They're going to feel challenged. And you need to ask yourself if you're willing to die on the hill. If the answer is, yeah, I'm willing to do that, then get after it. If the answer is, no, I'm not willing to die on that hill, I'm not willing to lose my job over it, then you're barking up the wrong tree, man. Like, I wish it was pretty. I wish it was, sugar coated. And it's like, oh, well, if you say this one thing and do this one thing, then
you can
they'll see.
No risk, but also get the reward. Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't things that you can talk about where, maybe some of your strategy will actually help, will improve the work environment, will improve the situation. If you can get an ally in leadership, then that's a strategy that you can employ. Look at it from their perspective. What is it that would be in their best interest? And if you approach it from that angle, Jocko would say flank them, right? You approach it from that angle. Now you have an ally. You don't have an enemy. So there are little things that you can do like that, but you don't get to absolve yourself of the potential consequence that comes with doing something that's going to rock the boat. It's just the nature of it. So in the meantime, I would be building up my network within the medical community. I would be exploring other opportunities for jobs in maybe more hospitable environments that are going to be conducive to what it is you're trying to accomplish. So you're not, without leaving yourself an escape route and hanging yourself, right? You can do this in a way that could be effective. But yeah, you just try to build an ally, try to see it from their perspective, try to frame what you're doing if you've decided to go this route from the perspective of how it's going to serve them, and that's what you can do.
Yeah. I'd just be careful not to demonize and attack the individual, but like keep the mission up front and clear in your mind of why you're doing this, and make it about the mission. Don't make it about attacking the individual or like they're wrong or they demonize it or trying to do. Don't go into that space.
Right.
Then you're just attacking people. Because I really feel that like I could have an employee come rock the boat, but if their intentions are pure, like, hey, this is about just becoming more effective as a team, and it's not like an attack against me per se, then that will ring true and genuine, and I could have some respect to that. So try not to attack them. Don't attack me or I'll choke you out.
With your Chanel shirt on.
With my Chanel shirt. I thought you didn't know what Chanel was.
You told me what it was.
Whatever.
That's the first thing you said on the podcast.
Someone buy Ryan some Chanel cologne. Does Chanel make cologne, or is it just perfumes? I don't know. Mike Collins, get you a Chanel beard oil.
Yeah.
All right, Mike Collins, do you just take a leap of faith and put your family into short-term debt for a long-term gain when it comes to going back to school for a higher degree? Thoughts on this?
No, you don't do that.
Don't do it. Look,
your degree, it might be relevant and it might be worthy of pursuit, but your family's more important than that. Like you already made a commitment. You sign on the dotted line and says, I will honor you, I'll respect you, we'll do this together. We're going to, you've already made that commitment. So I'm not saying school's out of the picture. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you get on the same page with your wife and you start working through this. You start having the discussions. You start talking about the sacrifices that not only you will need to make, but that she will need to make if you're going to pursue this. And you get on the same page so that she knows what's up. You know what's up. There's timetables. There's expectations. There's some boundaries that are going to be implemented and upheld. There's some deep conversations that are going to need to be had, and everybody knows their role in this thing. But right now it sounds like, I'm the boss, I'm going to do it. And just, if my family, my family's just going to have to understand. Good luck with that. Because they ain't going to understand. Yeah. She's not going to understand. She's going to be pissed, maybe rightfully so. And your kids may not be pissed, but they're going to grow up wondering why dad wasn't around. Not, oh, he was trying to go to school to better himself. No, dad wasn't at my baseball game.
Yeah, translation, he doesn't love me is what they'll
right
is what their story is going to be.
So I'm not saying don't go to school. I'm not saying that. I'm saying think about how you go about doing it and think about how you can involve them in the process of it so they see it as a family mission versus, hey, here's dad's thing he wants to do. How can you enlist them in the cause and enlist them in the fight? What is going to be their role? What are they going to have to sacrifice? Because we know you're going to have to make sacrifices. But what are their sacrifices? Are they willing to make those sacrifices? And sometimes, yeah, with kids, you need to make an executive decision, right? Like when we moved here to Maine, which was 2 days ago, exactly 1 year, believe it or not, we took into consideration our kids' perspectives, but they didn't get a vote.
Yeah, but gave them a voice.
A voice, right? And we wanted to know, and we address their concerns that they still have. We talk about those things, but they don't get a vote. My wife, she gets a vote, right? So you got to get her on the same page, whatever that page looks like.
Okay. Travis Wader, thoughts on discovering what business you really want to open? I have a lot of skills, but can't seem to decide on which direction to aim at.
I think you're focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You're focused on the final result, which is like, how much money can I make? And is this sustainable? Will I be happy?
That's why you see so many
not
options.
necessarily bad. Yeah.
Is that why? Okay.
I think so. I think you're putting a cart before the horse a little bit. I mean, people are making money and careers doing some dumb shit. So you can't really say that there isn't anything out there that you can make a lot of money doing. And I mean, order of man, like who would have thought? Like all I do is talk with people all day.
Crazy.
Yeah. And it's very lucrative, right? Like you can do anything. Okay. So I think you ought to back up and instead of saying like, wow, I can't pick one, just pick one that sounds interesting to you and just take one step. Don't go take out a $200,000 loan and go secure a 4-year lease on a build. No, just one step. You know, if you want to build an apparel company, I don't know, I'm just pulling that out of thin air. Don't go buy all the screen printing stuff and spend $300,000 on all the equipment and the technology. No, just work with Teespring. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. Quality's going to suffer, but go see if you can sell 10 shirts.
Yeah.
And then when you can sell 10, see if you can do 20. And you can do 20, see if you can do 200. Oh, you know what? I'm doing 200 now. Maybe I should invest in my own inventory. Okay, now what shirt should I? Oh, that seems to be a good shirt. I need a designer, so I can hire a designer, a freelance guy. Maybe I bring him on for a certain amount of work per month or just case-by-case basis. You just start working into these things. And that's what I've done with Order of Man. That's what I did with my financial planning practice. And that seemed to work. You know, I know there's a lot of companies like startup companies and like, you know, angel investors that come and invest, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Look, that's not you. I mean, maybe it is. Like, I guess it could be. Yeah. But if you're looking for the $1 million idea, I would just say, why don't you just get to work on the one thing that sounds remotely interesting to you? And here's the thing, if go back to apparel. If you go down the apparel route and you sell 200 shirts and you're like, oh, cool, I did it, but I didn't really enjoy it. You're not out anything. You actually have more money in your bank account than you had before. And you've got a whole bunch of experience that will translate into something else. I started another podcast before Order of Man, and I did about 20 episodes. Have you ever heard me say I wasted time doing 20 episodes with this Wealth Anatomy podcast? Never, and you never will hear me say that. Because it wasn't a waste of time. That's where I cut my teeth in the world of podcasting. And so people say, oh, Ryan, oh, you're so good at this. No, I'm not good at it. I've just done it a bunch. And it all stemmed from something that could be perceived as a failure.
Yeah, totally. Like it. All right. Michael Jetter, what are your thoughts on Robo investor like Wealthfront?
Well, I like that they take basically what they're good for is they take the cost and the emotion out of it. That's what they do. Are you familiar with what like a Robo is? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically you take funds like we talked about earlier, broadly diversified, low turnover funds, and you have an algorithm that's doing all of the work for you, like a Wealthfront or a Betterment, I think is another one. Okay. And that way you're not actively involved in the process, tinkering and jacking things up and going on your emotions. You're just letting a robo-advisor do it. Costs are low, turnover is low. There's a lot of value in that.
How often is that is it like a one-time calculation to determine investments, or is it changing on a regular basis? Or
it's different. Okay. But let's say I wanted to I wanted to sign up for Wealthfront. I'm sure that I go through some online questionnaire about my risk tolerance and my objectives and how much I can contribute and whether it's a lump sum or a reoccurring monthly deposit, things like that.
Yeah.
You go in to fill this questionnaire out and it says, okay, based on your risk tolerances and everything else, here's what we would recommend. Do you want to put your money here? And I click yes, and boom, there it goes, right? Or they give me a list. There's like, here's fund A, and this is for long-term growth, and here's fund B, and this is for short-term growth, which is, 5 years or whatever. They just give me some scenarios.
Based upon the numbers, yeah.
Based upon my inputs.
Yeah, okay.
The downside, and if you can do that, all the power to you. But I don't think many people can do it. I know a handful of people who can do it.
Meaning they're disciplined to let it be.
To leave it alone.
Yeah.
Because, well, people have lost a lot of money in the market. I shouldn't even say it that way. Their portfolio has declined drastically over the past 6 months. And most people are freaked. They're afraid. So what do they do when they're afraid? They sell everything off. When they should be buying more of it. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. If I said, what's the first rule of investing? Everybody would say, buy low, sell high. Everybody knows it. Nobody does it because their emotions are very, very powerful. So the Robo advisors help you get over that by just automating everything. But I promise you are going to be tempted when your neighbor says, oh man, I just lost 40%. Bro, you should really get out of the market. Or this is another one I hear. Oh, your portfolio only gets 10%. Well, mine got 18% last year. You should do what I do. And the neighbor, because he doesn't want to be outdone because of his ego, he's like, well, this only got 10. I'm going to put mine over there. And he puts it in the 18% fund and he loses his ass the next year. Because two things. Your neighbor was lying to you.
Or he bought
because he's got an ego too.
Yeah.
And number two, the market is not predictable. It's cyclical. So if you're just picking last year's winners, you're going to lose. Like you can probably do that with some degree of accuracy when it comes to sports, for example. Like you kind of know, hey, this year, these are going to be the top 5, top 10 teams based on talent, based on people coming back, based on the program and the coaching. You can take that stuff into consideration. But in the market, no. There's just so much uncertainty. Who knew there was going to be a global pandemic?
Yeah.
Nobody knew that. And no one could have predicted that. Oh, this one guy predicted it. That's what we call the law of large numbers. There's 1 billion prognosticators out there. And all it takes is for one of them to be right. And he gets to say, see, I was right. I was right. I predict this. I knew there was going to be a market crash. Yeah, 10 billion people were making different predictions. You just happened to win the lottery this time. You can't do it again. You won't be able to do it again. So you got to be careful of picking based on what people are telling you because they're probably lying because they have egos as well. Like your neighbor's not going to come to you and say, oh, Kip, oh, man, I just lost my ass in the stock market. I lost, 18%. How's your portfolio doing? And you're like, oh, it's done pretty good. I got 10, 5%, whatever. Like he's going to start lying because of his ego. And then you're going to make decisions not based in reality, but based on his emotions, his ego. So the point I'm making here is that if you can do it, cool. If you can't, then you need to hire a financial advisor who's not necessarily managing your money as much as they're managing you. You are the one that needs to be managed because all the advisors have all the access to the same information, the same funds, everything else. It's you who need to be coached, not your money.
Yeah. Okay, Joshua Shoebridge, do you have any advice for those who have found a friend or a family member's suicide?
Found a family or friend who's committed suicide?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I've never experienced. I mean, I've had people close to me who have killed themselves. My brother-in-law, in fact, my sister found him. No, I don't know what to say. Like, honestly, I don't like anything I would say would be inaccurate. I just don't know. I mean, I would say if you're tore up about it and you're having a hard time with it, and rightfully so, that you ought to get some professional help. That's what I would say. That's my advice. And I'm not trying to be dismissive of it. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I would get seek medical professional help to work through some of these issues by somebody who's qualified and trained to work you through some of this process. I'm not qualified to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've never experienced it. I just don't know. That would be horrific. I don't ever want to experience that.
Well, and I'm sure you're like, in your example, like she struggled, you know what I mean, with that imagery in her head. And
of course, probably still struggles with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had some friends that it's still a struggle even today.
Yeah. It's a struggle. So that's why you need to talk with somebody who's educated and trained in having these types of conversations. And look, if you put something like that on Facebook, for example, like just think about the shitstorm you're starting. Like, oh, you should do this and you should do that and you should do this. Like these people have no idea. They don't know your situation. They don't know what you're going through. They don't know the connection you had with this individual. They don't know your mentality and your mindset or where you're coming, your story.
Yourself. I mean, who knows, right?
They don't know any of that stuff. So you need to talk with somebody who knows how to get to the root of it so they can work you through it. That's what you need. And by the way, that's not a weakness. Like imagine this for a second. Okay. Let's say that you wanted to be, you wanted to play in the NFL. Okay. You're a young guy, you're in high school and you're a great football player and you want to go to college and you want to go play in the NFL. Like that's your goal. Would anybody ever say that if you hired a professional coach to help you build strength and speed and technique and work your form and work your drills so that you could achieve your goal, would anybody ever say you're weak? Yeah. You need to hire a coach to help you achieve your goals? Man, you're weak.
Idiot.
Nobody would ever say that. And yet there's the stigma that says, hey, like I need to get out of my own head. I need to make sure this is operating correctly and working at maximum capacity so I could achieve my goals and my desires. And I have this little kink because I experienced this thing. So I'm going to go to a coach who's trained to help me clear all this stuff up so that I can go on and drive on with my life and be the kind of husband and father and leader in my community that I want to be and that people need me to be. That's not weakness, man. That's like you caring about yourself and also caring about other people because you want to serve them. So you want to get everything right here. Hiring a coach, or in this case, a therapist, is not weakness. It's actually doing the right thing. So I know there's a stigma associated with it. Like, oh, I should just be able to get through this. Why? And you, by the way, you will get through it. If you bring in a therapist to help you work through something, you will get through it. And you could struggle through it on your own probably too, because you are strong enough to do that. But you don't have to do it that way. And it's not even the advisable way to do it. Not as effective as it could be.
Yeah, totally. Gus, JD, business growth goals for 2020.
Mine?
Yeah.
My goals for 2020. Well, I don't plan on year terms like that, but you know, if we look into what we're doing here for this year, it's to bring the events, the face-to-face events back online. Or offline, I should say.
Yeah.
Like get those going, which we do have the dates for. I think we wrote these down. So September 3rd through the 6th is our father-son event. And I think we have 5 or 8 spots left with that. Mm-hmm. And then October 9th through the 11th is our main event. And I think we have maybe 10 spots. And this is only because people weren't able to make the new dates. So again, it's September 3rd through the 6th for Legacy, which is a father-son event.
Both were sold out originally.
Yeah. And then October 9th through the 11th for the main event. So it's that. Then it's to bring our achievements and advancements into the Iron Council, and it's to continue to spread the message. And part of the way that we've actually spread the message is working with Warrior Poet Society too. So we've teamed up with them for their new Warrior Poet Society network, and I have an exclusive show over there where we're talking and discussing and doing much of the same thing we're doing here, but it's all exclusive. It's new content, exclusive stuff just for those guys. So you can check that out.
On their platform and their
network. On their platform. So it's not censored. It's not on YouTube. It's not on social media. There's no risk of it coming down. It's all right there. It's all available, and it's not influenced by these social media giants and the powers that be. So you can check that out at orderofman.com/WPSN, Warrior Poet Society Network.
Cool. Sounds
good.
Let's
take one or two more, Kip.
Okay. I'm good for one more if you're good with that. Samuel Tyler. I work in a newsroom, so So major culture and political issues are in front of all of us all the time. I'm outnumbered as the only conservative. How do I represent my views faithfully without compromising or being divisive or combative?
I think you need to be so good because you're outnumbered. I think you need to be so good in every other area that they respect you anytime you open your mouth, even if it's something they don't agree with. Now you're going to run into people who are bigots who won't accept any of that just because that's the way they are. But I think even in the media industry, I would say that a large percentage of people are still reasonable, still able to have and hold conflicting ideas. They're there. So you need to do your work faithfully. You need to be kind and empathetic. You need to be an achiever. You need to help people. You need to be a team member and a teammate and help them hit assignments and pick up stories. Like, you need to be so good in all of that area that anytime something political gets brought up or you need to make a point, they're like, oh yeah, let's hear what was this guy's name?
Samuel.
What do you have to say, Samuel? And even though it might be different than what they believe, they know you to be such a good person, a high, upstanding member of the team, that they may not embrace what you say, but at least they'll accept it and they'll entertain it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Last question. Why do we have to answer this one? Jason Schmidt, is rioting a legitimate form of protest or just an excuse to destroy things and loot?
You have to act. I mean, the short answer is no. It's not a legitimate. It's not a legitimate form at all. It's evil. It's criminal.
It's violent.
It's violent, and it's undermining what you need to do, or what you want, what you say you want. So the short answer is no. It's not legitimate. The long answer is, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want? Black people want to be treated equally. Reasonable request. So and I'm not going to say what the course of action, I'm just going to have everybody who's listening choose your own course of action that's going to align best with your objective. And I'm just going to go out and say that looting and rioting and being violent and beating people up and the things that are happening are not helping that cause. They're undermining it. It is not okay. It's disgusting. It's despicable, and there's no excuse for it. Just like we talked about earlier. Well, they're emotional, they're upset, and peaceful protest didn't work. So you can destroy people's property that have nothing to do with what you're experiencing. You can beat people up and kill people because they're driving down the road. Like, or defending their store. No, that is not acceptable. And it's not, what was the term he used? A legitimate, what did he say?
A legitimate form of protesting.
No, it's not. It's not protesting. It's rioting and looting. Protesting is something different.
Yeah. There you go.
All right. Got it. In the books.
All right. Submit your future questions onto the Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And of course, you can learn more about the Iron Council, our exclusive brotherhood, at orderofman.com/Iron Council. Just to reiterate those dates really quick. So September 3rd through the 6th is the Legacy event. That's our father and son event. To learn more, go to orderofman.com/legacy. And then the main event is October 9th through the 11th. And we have a number of spots open, but just to be really clear, this sold out already. So the fact that there's openings is kind of like a little bit of bonus ad for you guys that were not able to jump in and reserve a spot. Iron Council members that attend the main event will have an Iron Council dinner the night of the 8th. To learn more, go to orderofman.com/main event. And of course, that's the state Maine on the spelling. Okay.
That's right.
Support the podcast. YouTube, whatever podcast tool you're using. Yeah, I'm like Instagram.
You lost track.
Well, I was trying to think of the Warrior Poet Society network name.
Oh yeah, orderofman.com/WPSN.
WPSN. I'll write that down.
So, yeah, write that down
next time.
All right, guys, we appreciate you. I know it's crazy times, man. If there isn't a time that masculinity is needed, then I don't know what is. This is the time where it's needed now more than ever. Think about the virtues that you espouse, that you want to espouse, that you want to teach. Think about shared principles that we all ought to operate by, and just go out there and do your part. Do what's in your heart. Know what you stand for. Know what you don't, and protect yourselves. Protect other people. Look after people. Do the right thing. And we'll get through it. We'll get through it. It'll be painful, but we'll get through
together.
It. Yep. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.